All right, friends, welcome on Salt City Hoops live postcast. I don't know if we have anything to talk about tonight. The Jazz taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers, a small town near Akron, Ohio, host to famed LeBron James and Mark Price, and one Donovan Mitchell tonight. What an interesting thing that we have to go on today. Wow. Donovan Mitchell, first time back in Utah. Obviously, we played Donovan in Cleveland recently, but that had none of the panache as Donovan's return to Utah tonight. Obviously, I'm sporting Donovan Mitchell t-shirt tonight. Like many in the crowd tonight, I am an unabashed pro-Donovan supporter here, so don't bring any of your anti-Donovan rhetoric in here. It was extremely fun to watch him. Some of these star players, they have moves that you can call them stylistic, but it's really just like how they move with the basketball. It becomes very distinctive. You watch them on TV night after night after night, and it becomes distinctive. And you see it with Giannis, you see it with LeBron, you saw it with like Dwayne Wade, Stephen Curry. They have ways of moving with the basketball that are unique. And yes, we watched Donovan be the star player for the Jazz over the years, and so we've seen a lot of Donovan Mitchell. But I think he has like a distinctive style with how he dribbles the basketball, how he shoots the basketball. I think ever since his rookie year, it's been so impressive how he can pick the ball up the dribble and still go straight up and down. It was very that is distinctive, and it brought me chills kind of seeing his first couple threes in the first quarter. That distinctive style, like that's when it really hit home for me. Like, holy shit, Donovan Mitchell is playing in Utah tonight. So we had a fun one today. Jazz get the win, 116-114. A little bit of weird fourth quarter that we're going to talk about in a little bit. For now, this is the Salt City Hoops live postcast and beer. I'm going to bring my mic a little bit closer so you can hear me a little bit better tonight. This is the live postcast and beer, so I have to describe the beer we got today. This is from Fremont Brewing in Seattle. A wonderful brewery that always has lots of good stuff on tap and always unique stuff that they bring. They really are a great dedicated brewery. This is their bourbon barrel aged winter ale. It's technically described as a winter ale, but it's really just a bourbon barrel aged ale, right? And because of this, adding the spices of coffee and cinnamon, I think a couple are adjuncts, you get that, the designation as a winter ale. This is 13.5%. This is no joke of a beer. And the friends of the postcast know I love my dark beers. I love my barrel aged beers, but I do like it when they, you add the adjuncts of flavors and lactose or whatever you have that kind of deadens that liquor feeling to your beer. And no, not the case with this one. This one is definitely, you can taste the bourbon. I don't think it goes super well with it, but the coffee and the cinnamon definitely come through. This is a wonderful beer to have today. I had their 2018 bourbon barrel aged. The same version of this, a 2018 version that won a gold medal at the Great American Beer Festival recently, and they were giving 1 ounce pours of it at the beer festival this year, and I was just going around in circles, just getting 1 ounce pour after 1 ounce pour of this, and I think this one isn't quite as good as that, but it's delicious and great to have you here today. Drinking this one on a wonderful Tuesday night. You only need one of these to have some fun, right? So, if those of you on Twitter Spaces, if you are hear any pauses in my talking, that is because I am having some 13.5% bourbon barrel aged coffee cinnamon bee balm from Fremont Brewing, a bourbon barrel aged winter ale. Whew! All right, now that we got the beer discussion out of the way, this is gonna. I'm only about halfway or not even a third of the way through this one. This is going to knock me on my ass later on our Tuesday. But this is a reason to celebrate. I am so happy about a lot of things. One, that I was proven right that this crowd would not boo Donovan fucking Mitchell, right? Like, we are not in a position to where you think about like the fan base at large. I think a lot of us who are very much too much online, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, we're just very much on the internet. We hear and we see a lot of the comments from the worst of Jazz fandom. Not even just Jazz fans, but just, I think, NBA fans in general. We see it written, right? And I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, what have you, they are still like old comment sections to news articles, right? If you are someone who was on message boards back in the day, right? And not back in the day, still currently, right? The person who has that that negative voice will get drowned out by people who are more positive. And I think in social media, those negative voices become more amplified. If you go to a Jazz game, and I have not had the fortune of going to many Jazz games because I've never lived in Salt Lake City, but I've been to a handful. The average Jazz fan is just a Jazz fan. They're just a person going to enjoy a basketball game, and they love the Jazz. And pretty much, if you ask the average person, what do you think about Donovan Mitchell leaving? And they're going to be like, we had a good run, and I'm disappointed he left, but it's probably going to be a good time. I'll enjoy watching him again. And as soon as you play that video tribute, right, it's nothing but cheers, right? Contrast that with Gordon Hayward. And the reason Gordon Hayward didn't get cheers upon his return to the average Jazz fan is because Gordon Hayward, first of all, left in free agency, right? So the average Jazz fan knows that Gordon Hayward just left. It wasn't a trade situation. So, second of all, it became a little bit more popular as to the reasons we don't like Gordon Hayward, right? Leaving to join his old coach in Boston, not really the most timeliest of thank yous, right? And even his first year, he had that catastrophic ankle injury where he was not, his first year after leaving Utah, he wasn't able to celebrate, for lack of a better word, his return to Utah. So with Gordon Hayward, we had a lot more time for the average Jazz fan to catch on, like, oh, first of all, I'm more distanced from his successes. And two, I have more time to simmer on from what I'm hearing on the streets about why we fucking hate Gordon Hayward. And so there's that's a lot more obvious to the average Jazz fan. Also, Gordon Hayward is half or less of the player that Donovan Mitchell was at this point in their career. Not just from like an on-court standpoint, but who he meant to the average person. Gordon Hayward was just like a really good basketball player for the Utah Jazz. Donovan Mitchell was a cultural and popular pop culture force for Salt Lake City. And the average person definitely knows about Donovan Mitchell. So his return, having been traded, and some of the undercurrents about why we can be upset at him, require like several layers of onion peeling back to understand, like, why is the online community pissed off at Donovan Mitchell, right? I don't think that the average person was going to understand that. And so, nothing but cheers. That's the first thing I'm going to be very happy about, is there was nothing but cheers at his introduction, the tribute video, which was just extremely well done. I'll watch that 9 times. And especially on the departure. Yes, the Jazz fans were happy because the Jazz fans won. Because the Jazz won. It was a very exciting, fun game that they won. Donovan Mitchell scores 46 points, so you got to celebrate Donovan Mitchell. And so, yes, the crowd was very vociferous, and they're cheering for Donovan when he left. So I'm sure there was some winning element to that. But nothing but just overwhelming support for him. And the only boos you heard, now I give Holly Rowe a lot of shit for tending to look at the positive side of things or trying to hide some negativity on the broadcast sometimes. But there was a time during like some free throws where Donovan was getting booed when he was shooting free throws. And I think she was absolutely right. And I would love if anyone who was at the game is tuning in to comment on this if they were there. But she said on the broadcast, these seem like almost like tongue-in-cheek, like, we're cheering, we can't cheer for you, man, you're shooting free throws, we're going to boo you, and because we know you, we're going to boo you extra hard. Kind of like giving people in your family a little bit harder criticism. We're giving them a little bit more deep jokes and really insulting them because you can take it, and you have a little bit closer bond. Those boos did not feel like, oh, look at this asshole shooting free throws, right? When Donovan Mitchell airballed the three, the crowd didn't give their typical airball chant. It was more of like, there he is shooting an airball. you're wearing the wrong colors now today. I wasn't in the crowd, right? So I'm really just looking at this from afar. But that's how it felt. What is unmistakable, though, is the introduction and the departure of Donovan Mitchell when he was being introduced and when he left the court. Just overwhelming support. He's still signing autographs when he leaves. I thought it was particularly notable at the end of the game. Again, Jazz win. Everyone's kind of in a good mood. But the Cavaliers lost, and Donovan had every reason to be in a sour mood about a very conflicting end of that game with a lot of stress, a lot of issues, a lot of weird foul calls, a lot of weird foul no calls at the end of the game. You can't blame a guy for just, if he was to just like dap up the guys that he knows well on the team, like Conley and Clarkson, and kind of left the floor, and his mom and sister were sitting courtside. Maybe he just kind of left the game and just kind of gave away goodbye. No, and this is the genuine part of Donovan, where I do think he gets some fair criticism for being a little bit of a PR machine, but in those moments, there's no PR about that. He's not finishing a game where he's playing 40 minutes and is in his head about public relations. No, it is genuinely in his heart to stick around and talk to Walker Kessler, a guy he does not know, played against once in his career, and has an extended conversation with him with the cameras on him about proper drop back defense. Holy shit. Like that's just not necessary for someone like Donovan to do. I do think he's a genuine person who cares about the people around him, and I think because he does have that genuine affinity for people and an ability to get along with everyone he interacts with, I think it was easy to coach him into those extra PR moments. But I do think at his core, he is just someone who likes to, he did expect to just kind of be a late lottery or late first even round pick, was just trying to make his rounds in the NBA, and he's really just like, he's really happy to just be here. I think that is a genuine part of him. So at the end of the game, he's having an extended conversation with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which I know they shared 3 months together at the trade deadline last year. But that's a nice conversation to have. He's talking with Rudy Gay. He's dapping up everyone in the Jazz that he does not know and that he did not play with, right? Sure, the conversations with his former teammates were longer, but he's sticking a long time. He's saying hello to Ryan Smith. I don't know who the old white guys were who were sitting courtside at the end. I assume they're very rich people, but he was very glad to dap them up and say goodbye when they called his name over, right? He was not in a rush to leave. And cheers all around. Glad the Jazz got the win. I mentioned through pretty much all week that I just did not think that the average Jazz fan would boo him. I think it's a significant minority of folks who have an issue with him, and they were thankfully drowned out, and they, as I said today, they can fuck off forever. There's no longer has to be an aggressive talking point. This can be something where the assholes can just leave forever. We don't have to deal with them. Lost my train of thought. I had another point on Donovan that I really wanted to make. Yes. So it's also nice that he had a good performance, right? It was kind of fun to have that push and pull of having Donovan succeed a little bit, right? It would have felt a little weird if he just had like a weird off shooting night. So it was nice to see him play well. And the Jazz get the win. So who wants to talk about actual basketball? I'm going to take a break here and have a sip of this 13.5% bourbon barrel-aged coffee cinnamon winter ale. If anyone on YouTube or the Twitter Spaces, if you want to drop a comment or if you want to ask to speak, this is a super open postcast. This is meant to be, this tends to sometimes turn into like a one-man show where I'm talking to you guys about the Jazz, but this is meant to be a post-game hangout, right? Too often we were sitting on Twitter and we're all kind of sending comments to each other back and forth. This is an opportunity to, you're sitting there, you just saw a stressful game and you're thinking, man, all I want to do is just kind of respond to tweets and tweet myself and whatever. And this is just meant to be like a very casual hangout. Sometimes I devolve into talking about the advanced stats that happened today. We have some good stuff to talk about today. I'm going to talk about Jordan Clarkson's massive fourth quarter. But this really is meant to be like a casual hangout where you guys really kind of enjoy, like, whoo, we just saw a Jazz basketball game. Let's talk about that a little bit. And upon my request, I think my friend of the postcast, Ben Gaines, has requested to speak. I really appreciate it. Ben, you can talk about anything, Donovan, Utah Jazz, or anything. I love having you on, and curious what questions or comments you have about what you just saw today. I can hear you just fine.
That's weird. When you join it, it's like when you used to call into sports talk radio and it skips. I had no idea it did that.
Yeah, and that's how I hope this is. It's like a radio show. So were you at the game? I'm hearing some background noise. Are you on your way home?
No, I am at a hotel, so I apologize for the background noise. I won't stay for long. I watched the game from the hotel. I was definitely one of those.
Did we lose Ben?
No, I'm sorry. I'm here.
Hello, Ben.
Can you hear me?
Yes. So you said you watched the game at the hotel.
Great radio. Yeah, I was one of those people who thought that this was going to be a rough return for Donovan, and I was one of those people who was absolutely sucked in by the extremely online crowd, and I'm just thrilled that I was wrong. I did not. I didn't read I have been mostly off of Twitter this week, so I missed you predicting that we weren't going to have an ugly scene at Vivint, but just thrilled, proud of everything that happened tonight. I thought it was awesome, and I'm glad you were right. And your lesson on the fact that the extremely online people who are voicing their negativity are not the majority is well taken, and I will remember that for the future. Anyway. First-time caller, long-time listener, but I do need to run, so I'll leave you with that. Thanks for the show.
Yeah, Ben, I'm so glad you joined, and to be clear, the background noise wasn't too bad. I heard a little, definitely indications of human beings in the background, so I didn't know if you were on your way home or something. So it wasn't too bad. Ben just had some compliments about how it is right that we might be trending too much towards giving too much credence to the online community for how much weight do they really have? There's a social media trope, right? Like, you can read 999 positive comments, and then the 1,000th. Sorry, that's a difficult word to say when you're drinking a 13.5% beer. I'll just say the 100th comment that is negative, you tend to stick on that. Can you believe what Trevor Lee, representative-elect for the state of Utah, said about Donovan Mitchell? What a racist asshole. It's so alarming to see that comment sometimes that you tend to focus on that for days. And it especially is alarming as a fan of the team, right? Where it's I let, political positions of players pretty much slide by me, because if you're going to care too much about that, you're going to drive yourself a little crazy about things when you really are cheering for just the Utah Jazz. And if you don't have a healthy divorcing of what you support about political positions here and there about your favorite athletes, you end up in these weird positions where you state really bizarre things, or you care too much about the other side of things. And this is an exclusively of people who are very much too much online about things. For the record, I am extremely pro Donovan Mitchell and pretty much everything that he was trying to espouse in Utah. I've talked about it ad nauseum why why I understand Donovan Mitchell's departure, and for everyone who says like, oh well, he didn't request a trade, so that's honorable. I don't give any credence to that. He did everything but request a trade. I think as Tony Jones elucidated in his article about Donovan Mitchell's return to Utah, which was yesterday on The Athletic. I highly encourage you to read it or find a bootleg account to read it if you don't have an account. Tony Jones stated that Donovan Mitchell was going to leave in free agency, right? He didn't say it in 100% terms, but it was like, that was the tea leaf. Donovan Mitchell was going to leave Utah, and so I understand the negative kind of connotations towards him trying to leave eventually, but at the end of the day, this is just a guy who really did a lot of things for Utah, and we can be happy about what he did without focusing too much about kind of what he cares about politically and that sort of thing. So I absolutely espouse him and what he tried to do in Utah, as he felt like as a young black man he could bring to the forefront in a community that is way different from the Deep South, where they just don't even have a lot of experience with. They have a rich history, a rich negative history with African Americans in Utah, but it's completely different from the Deep South. And he's trying to bring that to light in a state where it just wasn't having his conversation, unfortunately. So while I can espouse those things, I do think that the racist people behind the attacks against Donovan are also kind of missing the point, where it's like, hey man, Donovan also did a lot of great things, and all he's just saying is like, hey, and if you saw any of the interviews he did today before that they were showing at halftime on the broadcast or in some of the commercial breaks, he is extremely grateful for the experience he got in Utah, and I think it's absolutely true, and I think he believes this, that if you put Donovan Mitchell at most other positions, and in his rookie year, he's not going to succeed, right? He's able to come in as a rookie, combo guard out of Louisville, and he has a little bit more infrastructure around him because of Gordon Hayward's recent departure. Rudy Gobert being chief among them. Derek Favors was still really good at that point, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that he is grateful for the opportunity, the coaching he had with Quinn Snyder, the ownership with the Miller Group. We had just, I think it was during his time, we had transitioned to the trust, but, we had Gail Miller at the helm, a very stable ownership group, if not a very lucrative ownership group. I don't think that's lost on Donovan. So I do appreciate, Ben, you speaking up and agreeing with me that sometimes we get a little too caught up in the online community. We see those 1, 2, 3 negative comments, and that can really mess us up from time to time. Or where we say, like, is this what like a significant portion of the fan base thinks? And you know what? If you polled the average person in the state of Utah, you might get a very disappointing result on what their feelings are about Donovan Mitchell. If you asked everyone who's going to the game today, especially people who are willing to buy tickets, right? So I do think there's a bias in the other direction, actually, towards that this crowd was going to be a favorable Donovan Mitchell crowd. But if you ask, like, the average person who cares about the Jazz, not the average Utah voter or resident, but the average Utah Jazz fan, first of all, they're a fan of the NBA's, right? So they're probably a little bit more cognizant of the actual underlying issues that these men are facing on a day-to-day basis in a predominantly black league. So you have a little bit of bias in that direction. But the average, just normal, I think we forget how, completely divorced from reality the average person is, how not online they are, how much of the news they don't watch, how much of the news they only understand of, there was an issue did you hear about that horrible murder down south last week? The average person is not really kind of in a lot of the stuff. They love Donovan Mitchell. Their kids have Donovan Mitchell's shoes. Their kids are doing step back jumpers, trying to imitate how Donovan Mitchell does them. That is what they are. They are just basketball fans, and they appreciate what Donovan Mitchell was able to do. The most negativity that I think the average fan has is actually something that I agree with, and that I said today on Twitter, speaking of 2 Online, as we do an online postcast, and I'm sitting here with my face on the screen, or you're hearing my voice on Twitter Spaces. I said today on Twitter that, I actually do have an issue with his departure as a fan. I don't have an issue with him. I was left feeling very dissatisfied that, hey, we traded Rudy Gobert, and he learned about the Gobert trade as he's sitting in Connecticut. I think it was on a boat, if I'm not mistaken, with Will Hardy, our new coach, and there was never any comment about like, hey, had a great time with Rudy, and looking forward to this next chapter of Jazz basketball. I think it was always like he was ready to leave, and I kind of always I'm one of you fellow Utah Jazz fans that feels aggrieved when someone doesn't like the Utah Jazz. I understand the not liking Utah part, but the Utah Jazz have this wonderful practice facility that's top 2-3 in the entire NBA. They have an ownership group that is not just dedicated to the Jazz, but is now rich as hell, right? They're not the Millers. Like, Ryan Smith is a capital B billionaire. And this is a organization that has a great management scouting structure in place that they will always build a team around him. I was a little frustrated that he didn't give this another go, and that we all want Damian Lillard on our teams. Every fan of every NBA franchise wishes you could have a Damian Lillard. Now, I know Portland fans from time to time have wished for the hard reset. I'm sure they're happy they didn't now. Portland might not be a capital, championship contender, but they are in a much better position having drafted Shaedon Sharpe. They have Yusuf Nurkic on what looks like they're going to develop this team with Anthony Simons and Yusuf Nurkic for the last, because Yusuf Nurkic is actually pretty young, all things considered. This is now a Portland Trailblazers podcast. But now they have a position where like Damian Lillard is aging out, and he's still really good. He's an obvious all-star caliber player. They're glad they still have him. Every game you look for wins. Tom Lay, who is a Defector.com writer, who is a Denver Nuggets fan, but he talks a lot about in recent Jokic years about how all you want is just the opportunity to win. And game to game is and season to season is like, maybe you're not a contender, but sometimes for the average fan, you just want to be able to go into your arena and win. And I was disappointed that Donovan Mitchell didn't want to like stick around for like season 2 of the Donovan Mitchell Utah Jazz. I was disappointed in that. As a fan, I felt aggrieved as a Utah Jazz fan. Why don't people like the Utah Jazz? We have all these things in place that I just described. Why don't people want to be a part of this? And it made me upset that Donovan Mitchell couldn't put that all aside and be a Jazz member again and be a Jazz man for life. And with the recent, issues and everything that come to light about Karl Malone and John Stockton, man, I am itching for another statue, guys. Right? And I was like, Donovan Mitchell, he and Rudy, those are going to be the next statues, right? We'll put him at a different spot, and those will be the ones that our kids will take photos in front of. I was hurt. I'm not saying like, oh yes, we are unabashed Donovan Mitchell fans, and if you have issues with Donovan, you are per se a racist person. I think that's a lot of the case. But I am somebody that when I saw Donovan Mitchell getting introduced, and I was like, if I'm in the arena during that time, I'm probably thinking like, he's a player for the Cavs now. He's not our guy. And then as soon as they play the tribute video, like, yeah, I just started clapping. Like that was our guy. That is somebody who appreciated his time in Utah. That was our star player. And there have been stretches of he and Rudy's time where I said, like, yeah, Rudy's probably the better on-court impact player. But the ceiling of the Jazz was never about Rudy Gobert, right? Rudy Gobert might have been the best player game to game over Donovan Mitchell, but if the championship equity that the Utah Jazz have ever had has never been about Rudy Gobert. It's been about how good can Donovan Mitchell be. We saw it in the bubble. We saw what happened when he injured his ankle and could barely finish the Memphis series. and just frankly could not finish the Clippers series. The ceiling of the Jazz was predicated on how good Donovan Mitchell can be. And it's great to get a 1 seed. It's great to get a 2 seed behind the likes of someone like Rudy Gobert, who can just crush bad teams from game to game. The playoff ceiling was always about Donovan, and I think that's what that tribute video meant to me. I think that's what watching him score 46 points did to me today. He scored, I think it was 25 in the first half, or 20 something. He was bound for a 50-point night for much of the game. It felt special. We had a lot more people on now than at the beginning. I want to mention one key thing about Donovan Mitchell that I said at the top of the broadcast. We're so used to seeing like some of these star players on ESPN, TNT, whatever, that aren't Jazz players, and you like recognize who they are based on their silhouettes and their move style, right? We can spot LeBron if you completely grayed out LeBron's image and you just showed like a blank image of him, or a video of him dribbling to the basket, you would immediately identify his movements as being like, oh, that's a LeBron James move, right? His jumper, right? Like you know, like that's LeBron James. There's a lot of players like that, like Steph Curry's 3-point shot. We know these things as players. Donovan Mitchell has such a signature dribble style, step back style, shake to him. His hesitation moves are so signature. It's so quintessential. Only Donovan Mitchell can do. His best skill is he can shake and shake and shake, and then somehow rise completely vertical, stiff as a board for a very formed 3-pointer. I've never understood how he was able to do that with his body. And the reason I'm mentioning all that is I had happy feelings, I had kind of neutral feelings when he was being introduced, and then as soon as he took the floor and he made those two first couple 3-pointers, I immediately thought, I felt tingly watching him with those step backs and that shooting form. I was like, ooh, that's Donovan Mitchell. And I've watched a lot of Cavs games this year, and I've really enjoyed watching the new Cavaliers. I love Evan Mobley. We saw him kicking the shit out of Walker Kessler today. So we love Evan Mobley, love Jared Allen. Weird trade at the time that's worked out for Cleveland financially. Darius Garland is a very talented point guard. Interested to see how he's going to play with Donovan going along, especially defensively. But and so I've watched Donovan play a lot. I've watched Donovan in Cavs uniform quite a bit, and it's been kind of fun and interesting. We've obviously seen Donovan play against Utah in Cleveland. I didn't get that tingly feeling until I saw him pulling up, around the perimeter. He's worn the Jazz Purple Mountains before. It was weird seeing him against the Purple Mountains, near center court, hitting those threes. It felt tingly and fun, and that was really cool. I need to go back and watch the video post-game and see, what exactly was he talking to Walker Kessler about? Because these players are so good about covering their mouths, and if they're going to talk about things they're trying to do later, or just, person-to-person, man-to-man conversations that, they don't want to do over text, but they still don't want the media to see. He was very open with what he was talking to Walker Kessler about, and I saw a couple comments about, drop, you're in a drop, whatever. I don't know why, but seeing him coach up Walker Kessler was that was the thing that made me tear up a little bit. That was this is a guy who is clearly in his emotions right now, being in Utah. If Walker Kessler's in Minnesota, right, and Donovan's in Cleveland or whatever, right? Donovan is not finishing a game of basketball and having an extended conversation with a rookie 7-footer that he does not know about drop coverage, right? It was clearly he's in the moment, played against the Jazz, and Walker Kessler's a Jazz man right now, and he's talking to Walker Kessler about, how to be better next time. I don't know what his intentions were. I don't know why he decided to do that. It reminded me maybe a little bit of sometimes those conversations we used to see him talking with Rudy, right? I think the relationship is definitely 40% better than the online community would make it seem. They definitely don't like each other as people. Like, that's okay. But I think their basketball relationship has always been really healthy. And if not really healthy, it definitely was never sick, or to use the antonym of healthy. I do think that they were trying to make it work, and they definitely disagreed on a lot of points on certain things, but I think that conversation with Walker Kessler reminded me a lot of those like side out conversations that he would have with Rudy of like, if you go here, we can make 2 points work, right? So that's a hell of a lot of Donovan discussion. We've been talking about Donovan Mitchell for a long time. This is a long Salt City Hoops post because we haven't even talked about the fucking game. So let me stop here and drink my 13.5% beer. Got a lot of folks in the chat. Want to introduce myself again. My name is Mark Russell Pereira. I'm a longtime Jazz fan from the early 90s, growing up in Buffalo, New York. So I've had a lot of heartbreak through very poor television quality. This is the Salt City Hoops live postcast and beer. I do this for most every game that I can. This is also the Salt City Hoops live postcast and beer. I'm very clear about that. We drink a beer every time we're here on the postcast. Today we have a 13.5% ABV coffee, cinnamon, bee-bomb, bourbon, barrel-aged winter ale from Fremont Brewing in Washington, Seattle specifically. This has gotten me through my emotions on this Donovan Mitchell return night. I'm going to take a sip real quick for those on Twitter who don't know that I'm drinking this beer. That is excellent. So this is also meant to be not just me going on this long soliloquy about what I feel about Donovan Mitchell. This is also meant to be a space for, we're all on Twitter after the game. We're all seeing people's comments. We probably now just finished the interviews for the players and the coaches, and we're commenting on that. This is meant to be a space for all of us to talk about, like, what are you thinking about? How are you feeling about the Jazz after the game? Instead of just, like, sitting on your phone staring at the screen, I want this to be an opportunity for you guys to ask questions or drop a comment. This is meant to be more of, like, a good old radio show from the 90s and 2000s. So if any of you on YouTube or Twitter Spaces, if you want to drop a comment or request to speak, I will absolutely get to you, and we'll talk today about Donovan Mitchell, the awesome fourth quarter, the Jazz win over the Cavaliers, 116-114. So just a reminder, if you're listening or watching right now, say hello. I'd love to talk to you. If you're on Twitter Spaces, check out the YouTube link. You get to see me in all my glory. I'm wearing my Donovan Mitchell t-shirt here. You can see me getting drunk on this 13.5% beer. So that's a lot of Donovan Mitchell talk. I of course, like I said, if you want to request speak or drop a comment about Donovan, I will happily take your call, as it will. But let's move on to the actual game if you want to. I certainly do want to, because that was a win, and that was a hell of a win. Riley on YouTube says, shout out to you and Dan Clayton. Great basketball minds. Much love to you guys. Look, man, if you're going to call me a great basketball mind with Dan Clayton, that means a lot. I really do need to get better at writing more frequently. I just wrote 5,000 words on the midterm grades for the Jazz. If you want to check that out at saltcityhoops.com. I've learned a lot about being a great basketball mind, as Riley says, from reading Dan's work, especially about like how to analyze film specifically, how to use stats as part of a story. I think what I love writing the most about is actually what we're talking about right now, is taking what you feel as a fan, taking what I feel as a fan, and putting it in plain language. That's my favorite thing to do, is be like, look, it's easy to have this face-to-face conversation about how the Jazz are doing, what you feel about them. I love trying to find words to put that in an article that you can read 3 or 4 times and be like, yeah, you know what? That is how I feel about the Jazz. And so that's what I like writing about. I care about the stats behind the Jazz, so I can't not incorporate that. But it is about the feel. So the game today, who likes touchdowns in basketball? Jordan Clarkson has a 7-point play in the fourth quarter, and if you're like, Mark, that's fucking stupid, there's no such thing as a 7-point play in basketball, well, you got as close as you can to it, as making it as easy as possible. So Jordan Clarkson gets an and one on a 3-point attempt. Karis LeVert fouls him on the 3-point attempt. This is Jordan Clarkson leads the NBA in 3-point attempt fouls, and Jordan Clarkson's natural shooting motion and the reason he's so good at shooting off the dribble, off weird angles with weird contests, is because his lower body is frequently in a forward motion. So what he's able to do is, if you watch how Jordan Clarkson shooting, this is way too esoteric for drinking beer on a Tuesday night, but he's able to keep his body square to the basket, and especially like his shoulders up. He knows how to fire a basket, and he does arcing shots, he does line drives. He's very Kyle Korver-like in his upper body. He is square to the basket and he fires that basketball in. The problem is his legs go flying everywhere when he shoots threes, and that's not very Kyle Korver-like or Donovan Mitchell-like. And Donovan Mitchell doesn't get those 3-point shot attempt fouls very often. He had a couple at the end of the game when the Cleveland's trying to come back desperately, where if he had a little bit more flair to his lower body, he might have drawn some contact on some of those 3-point attempts. But Jordan Clarkson, his lower body is always just naturally flailing out. And not like Draymond Green, where he's kicking guys in the nuts. They're not like completely like unnatural motions where you're really wondering, like, what are you doing, man? They are really just it's just like a kind of a forward lunge of his legs. And he gets caught on 3-point attempts, foul attempts all the time. He gets fouled on those all the time. Today, he was a masterclass. He had 3-point foul attempts in the fourth quarter alone today. And on the 7-point play, he makes the first basket. He gets fouled on it via, he's kicking his legs out, and Karis LeVert definitely catches him on it. They ruled it very quickly a flagrant foul. I thought that might not be graded a flagrant foul, if only because Jordan Clarkson did have a little bit of a leg kick on it, so I thought they would give LeVert the benefit of the doubt. But by grading it a flagrant foul, Jordan Clarkson is able to shoot the free throw for the and one, and a flagrant foul means you get possession back. And on the ensuing possession, Jordan Clarkson gets fouled again on a 3-point shot. He nails all 3 free throws. He nails the and one free throw. And so he gets 7 points in a matter of one and a half possessions, if you really want to quibble with it. But it's 7 points where Cleveland doesn't have the basketball, right? It's not that Cleveland turned it over or Cleveland missed a shot or anything like that. Cleveland never had the basketball, and the Jazz were able to put up 7 points in a row. That was a huge comeback. The Jazz shoot 5 of 25 in the fourth quarter, right? So that doesn't include the free throws that Jordan Clarkson shot, obviously. But the Jazz they pulled ahead in the third quarter. They at one point had a 13 or 12 point lead in the third quarter. They had really stormed back. Jared Allen left in the first quarter, so you're left with Evan Mobley as the only qualified rim protector on the Cavaliers, and they really struggled at the rim when he was out. But they really went on their run when he was in. And so the Jazz were up 13 in the third quarter, and then the Cavaliers stormed all the way back, definitely aided by Evan Mobley coming back in, playing center, blocking a lot of shots, really frustrating Walker Kessler in the fourth quarter. And so the Cavaliers take this 5-point lead very late in the ballgame. And at one point, I think it was 7 or 8 points in the fourth quarter, and it's these 3-point fouls. The 7-point swing brought it all the way back. And it wasn't just that. Jordan Clarkson had a couple beautiful 2-point shots. I expressed a lot of frustration over how the offense devolved away from Lauri Markkanen in the fourth quarter. This became like Quinn Snyder ball, where we just kind of gave the ball to the best ball handling playmaker. When it's like I understand that like that's a way to create offense, but Lauri Markkanen is the best scorer on the floor, and with Evan Mobley being the only qualified defender on the floor, with Jared Allen leaving in the first quarter due to illness, I do think that there was an opportunity to bring Lauri Markkanen more into the offense in the fourth quarter, and that just wasn't happening. And this has been true for the NBA for the past 15 years, is you tend to just default into giving the ball to ball handlers for this sort of thing, and Lauri Markkanen just does not have isolation playmaking ability, so you're kind of hesitant to say, like, all right, we're going to start our possession, we're going to end our possession in the fourth quarter with Lauri Markkanen. My counterpart to Lauri is always going to be like, what I want Lauri to be is some form of Klay Thompson, right? Klay Thompson's a Hall of Famer. I'm not trying to make Lauri Markkanen a Hall of Famer. But Klay Thompson is the quintessential second banana of a basketball team, where he is never going to be an isolation player. Sometimes you can have him do some things because he's a great player. He's surprisingly pretty good in the post. He's good at reading screens, that sort of thing. But Klay Thompson is a play finisher, and that's what you're kind of expecting Lauri Markkanen to do. And so in the fourth quarter, when you have, like, we got to get a bucket, you tend to go to your bucket getter, and you go to a guy like Donovan Mitchell or Jordan Clarkson in these scenarios. I just felt like without Jared Allen, Cleveland really didn't have any defense on the floor. And the man guarding Markkanen at this point was either Lamar Stevens, who is just kind of a guy, or Evan Mobley. And I do think you could have brought Markkanen's defender up at the screen and force a switch onto something where you either then end up with Jordan Clarkson against Evan Mobley, which isn't exactly an advantage for Utah, but, guard against the big, or you get Markkanen going up against Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Karis LeVert. So Jordan Clarkson obviously took advantage of Karis LeVert with those fouls, but I definitely did think there was an opportunity to bring Markkanen more into the action in the fourth quarter. And as we say, it's mandatory to mention this every single postcast. This season isn't about wins and losses. It doesn't mean it's about losses. It's not about wins either. It's not about either of those. So I'm curious to see, like, you get in a clutch situation, can Markkanen be a guy that you just go to, right? Is he a guy that when we get into the playoffs 2 years from now and Markkanen is still going to be on the team, that you say, like, okay, this is a Markkanen. Let's do a Dirk Nowitzki style post up and see what he can do out of it, right? Or more modernly, Joel Embiid, right? Is he a guy that you're going to try to do that sort of thing with? That's not the only way you can do isolations with Markkanen or initiate a play through Lauri Markkanen. To be clear, you don't have to say, like, oh, you're 7 foot, let's do a fucking post up. That's not what I mean. It's more that I find it interesting that when we got in this situation today, it was Jordan Clarkson show. With an actual rim protector on the floor and Evan Mobley, right? And I just kind of get frustrated with, like, ball-centric, heavy offense. But hey, it's Jordan Clarkson time, says Jordan Clarkson. And look, man, Jordan Clarkson was an absolute hero. How many points did he actually score total in the fourth quarter here? He was 4 of 8 from the field, and he had a bunch of free throws. I don't have the points in front of me. But, wow. That was a fun little Jordan Clarkson thing. As far as the 5 of 25 from the field for the whole team, that was very frustrating. Both teams shot very poorly from three, so while the Jazz did not have a great three-point shooting night tonight, neither did the Cavaliers. Karis LeVert going 1 of 4 from three, Chetty Osman going 0 of 2. Kevin Love, pretty reliable three-point shooter. He's 3 of 12 from the field today, 0 of 4 from 3. Kevin Love missed a lot of bunnies at the rim that were frankly uncontested, right? Like, there were guys in the area, but he was missing stuff off the rim left and right. Donovan Mitchell was a very healthy 7 of 18. 18 three-point attempts for Donovan Mitchell. I didn't realize he attempted that many threes. But the Cavaliers shoot 10 of 37 from three today. That's 27%. That's very bad. And the Jazz were just a smidge better at 10 of 36, so 27.5%. From three. Malik Beasley continues his extended cold streak for a little while. He was 1 of 8 from three today. Again, I do not have a single problem with any three that Malik Beasley ever takes. He's a great shooter. I love that he's jacking up 8 threes in 34 minutes. He had like 11 three-point attempts in 20 minutes the other day, and that's really, really good. The three-point attempts in that many minutes, like that really does stretch a defense. The attempts are almost more important than the makes. It's kind of like when we talk about Ochai Agbaji, when we say with Agbaji, trying shit and failing is more important for Agbaji than just being invisible or doing nothing, right? Like, I'd rather Agbaji have a game like today where he's 1 of 4 from the field, 3 fouls, than the other night when it's kind of seemed like he was a NPC out there just kind of like floating around. He shot a couple threes and missed them. I'd rather Agbaji kind of be in the action a little bit more. So Beasley, I love having him shoot the threes today. Lauri Markkanen was 6 of 18 from the field today. The first time in a long time that I can remember Lauri Markkanen having such a bad field goal percentage night, but he's 12 of 14 from the free throw line. And once again, I think that ends up being, I'm going to confirm this right now, which makes for great radio, but the actual, the effective field goal percentage of that, I think actually ends up being above average with a 12 of 14 from the free throw line. So we're of course going to try to see if Cleaning the Glass has his game. They don't have his game up right now, so I can't check the percentile on his effective field goal percentage. But 12-14 from the free throw line makes up for 6 of 18 from the field more often than not. But the more importantly than the 6 of 18 from the field and the 12-14 from the free throw line, 16 rebounds for Lauri Markkanen. And in the second half, Markkanen fucking wanted it, man. Like, I think it was painfully obvious that he was fighting for rebounds and he was contesting them against Evan Mobley really well. Kevin Love, who's a wonderful rebounder, he was fighting him really hard. The Cavaliers had 5 offensive rebounds in the first half, obviously aided by Jared Allen a little bit. Jared Allen had 0 offensive rebounds, but I think he's such a good blockout player, man. He's always kind of guarding off 2 players at once. But they had 3 offensive rebounds in the second half, and you end up with Lauri Markkanen having 3 offensive rebounds of his own. The Jazz have 15 offensive rebounds today. Jazz have been a pretty good offensive rebounding team that has not really been coming to light because they keep giving up a bunch of offensive rebounds on their own. Markkanen with 16 defensive rebounds, huge reason why the Jazz were able to win the possession battle or come close to it. They did not quite win the possession battle today with their 15 turnovers to the Cavaliers' mere 5 turnovers. But you when you win the turnover battle or when you win the offensive rebounding battle by 7, you can afford a little bit more flexibility in the turnover battle, which is what happened tonight. Markkanen's 16 rebounds, a big part of that. Markkanen's the alpha here, man. It's so cool to have him playing 39 minutes, plus 7 on the night. Loved having him. A lot of comments about how well Nickeil Alexander-Walker played today. I thought his scoring was efficient. I thought he was making good decisions. He finishes a minus 10 today, but I don't think that was all his fault. I think Alexander-Walker was put on an island for a couple stretches of the game where he had to kind of be the only defender against a Darius Garland or a Donovan Mitchell, and there wasn't much offense around him to make up for it. So I was also pleased with Nickeil Alexander-Walker's game. I actually had a struggle on who to put as the 3rd star for the Jazz today, which is fun. This is kind of a thing we have to do on the postcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you see it, and if you're on Twitter Spaces, this is what we have on YouTube. I have the graphic and my ugly face in front of you drinking this 13.5% beer. I have the graphic of my 3 stars of the night, and it's almost always Markkanen and Clarkson are going to be like your 1 and 2, and it really oscillates who that 3rd star is. It can be Mike Conley, it can be Walker Kessler, it can be Jared Vanderbilt. This is the first time that Nickeil Alexander-Walker shows up as the 3rd star on YouTube. You can go to my profile, I have it pretty easily linked there to find, that's because it was really hard to find a 3rd star for Utah today because there was a lot of folks who had good parts but bad parts to their game. Walker Kessler, I thought, really struggled against Evan Mobley today, especially on the offensive end. He ultimately did have 6 offensive rebounds, which really aided the Jazz. That was a huge part of it. He had a block. He was plus 6 today. He got the start in place of Kelly Olynyk today. And of course, as we know, when Walker Kessler starts for Kelly Olynyk, except for those weird couple of games in the middle of the season, when Walker Kessler needs to start at center for the Jazz, you can't also have Jared Vanderbilt out there. where I guess you can, but it's unwise. So Malik Beasley comes in for basically it's almost like Malik Beasley is the one who's starting for Kelly Olynyk, and Walker Kessler then subs in for Jared Vanderbilt, kind of a situation. I don't know if it was matchup based. Obviously, Cleveland starts a complete non-entity at small forward in Isaac Okoro, who as a top 5 pick, I think he was still his. I'm sorry, man. I'm not sure Okoro has much of a future in the NBA at all at this point. Because Cleveland's offense just kind of sticks him in the corner. You don't have to worry about him. So it's kind of easier to say like, all right, Malik Beasley, we want you to be on the floor with the Garland and Mitchell backcourt, and we're going to have our weakest defender, who at sometimes is going to be Mike Conley. It can be Malik Beasley at sometimes. We'll have you guys guard Isaac Okoro. And we'll have Kessler on Allen, and we'll have Markkinen. I'm sorry, I think it was Lauri Markkinen who was guarding Isaac Okoro at the beginning, right? And so then you kind of figure out how your defensive matchups work. You can really be flexible with your defense if you have such a shitty player like Isaac Okoro on the floor, right? And you're replacing Okoro with guys like Lamar Stevens, who kind of do everything at like a D+ level. Right, and you get Chetty Osman, who you can replace out there, who is he can really catch fire from 3, but he's really prone to missing a bunch of threes, and he can't play defense. Their best option at the 3 is Dean Wade, who is 6'8", 6'9", tall guy, who can shoot and he can defend at least better than any of those other players. Okoro's best asset is his defense, but even that grades out as just merely average. Dean Wade is injured, so that you have to play Okoro in these situations. So the starting lineup was able to be a little bit more flexible. So you have Walker Kessler starting for Olynyk. You have Malik Beasley starting in for Jared Vanderbilt. So Jared Vanderbilt comes in off the bench, 5 points, 5 rebounds, 3 offensive rebounds. That's kind of what I would expect Jared Vanderbilt to be in his future careers, this kind of 17-minute per game guy. I don't necessarily think he's a starter, but liked his contributions today. I do think Walker Kessler did face the issue of having to battle Evan Mobley on the other end. Evan Mobley eventually did foul out, but that was kind of towards when the game was out of hand. Evan Mobley finished with 12 points and 4 blocks. Anyone else worth mentioning today? I did mention Malik Beasley was 1 of 8 from the 3-point line, 4 of 12 from the field. But I just don't mind it, right? Like if he makes a few more threes, we're singing his praises as just an excellent game. So we did have Rudy Gay have the best half of his career, and Rudy Gay played a smidge in the third quarter, but I don't think he really played very much at all. He plays 6 minutes in the first half, and he has one of his efficient quarters that we can remember. This is a positive Rudy Gay review. Hit his 1 corner 3. He got out in the break a couple times, got fouled once, and of course he fouled a 3-point shooter for a 4-point play once, because not everything can be great with Rudy Gay, and he finishes at a neutral plus minus. Fontecchio got on the court in the first half for 5 minutes, and he had 1 really bad foul and 1 really bad turnover, and was otherwise kind of irrelevant. I want Fontecchio to be great, but it's just not happening. So I'm going to take a sip of beer here real quick. If anyone wants to drop a comment or a request to speak, the lines are open, friends. And I'd love to hear from you. If not, we'll sign off pretty soon after I leave a few closing comments. Let's see here. How's Twitter reacting to this wonderful game? Well, we had a great game today. Love being here. It's great to have Donovan Mitchell back in the fold. All the games are final tonight, so we don't have a random late game to tune into. So I'm probably going to kick my feet up, watch the highlights of this game, see how Denver kicked the shit out of the Lakers today by 13 points. We'll see how that game went. Hope Jarrett Allen's okay. I was really kind of hoping to see how this Jazz team would match up against them. I thought Lauri Markkinen 6 of 18 from the field. I think he could have done a lot better. I think he missed a few bunnies that he could have gotten. And what's weird, Lauri Markkinen 12 of 14 from the free throw line, he could have gotten a few more. Lauri Markkanen, his ability to draw fouls is, I don't know what conversations Markkanen had with officials at all, or if it's something about his newfound aggression that officials are appreciating. It is a qualitative aspect with officials too when they're watching a basketball game live and they're trying to assess calls. Aggression tends to be favored, and I need to go back and watch more of Cleveland, Chicago, Lauri Markkanen to see when he was taking it to the rack like this. Was he this violent with his movements? Because he's a very violent basketball player in the paint. And that is going to draw fouls, right? Part of the reason Shaquille O'Neal used to not be able to draw fouls very often is because he would... he was kind of meandering with his physical bruteness, right? And he would plow through guys with such ease that he could do so slowly and it wouldn't look like he was being affected by fouls. Whereas Markkanen kind of just, his first moves when he gets the basketball are so violent and in your face that refs are like, oh shit, like that's an obvious foul. And by the way, Lauri Markkanen just got an and one. So I am interested to see like what was Markkanen doing in a previous in a previous life, so that we can see how that's affecting it. I think the last analytical point I'll make today is, for the first time all season, Lauri Markkanen was double teamed starting in the first half. He's been double teamed before the season a couple times, especially after he's gotten hot and he's played well. But this is the first time that starting in the first half that an opponent has said, "Oh no, we're gonna make the other guys on the court do something," especially when Jordan Clarkson was not on the court or Malik Beasley wasn't on the court. They were saying, "We're gonna trust that you can't make this work without Markkanen," and I walked away pretty disappointed with Markkanen's reads out of double teams today. Dan Clayton mentioned in Assault City Hoops today, I thought a very like where Lauri Markkanen can improve on the passing front or the distribution front. I think the one thing that he mentioned that really affected me the most was when he said, a lot of players who have this much usage and touch the ball as much and attempt as many shots as Lauri Markkanen does, they kind of fall into like 4 or 5 assists per game by accident, just by having the ball a lot. And Lauri Markkanen, he gets the ball, he is scoring the basketball. And sometimes when he decides that, and this was especially true today, and if you watch it back today, he would get so aggressively defended legally, and he'd realize there's just no way I can attempt the shot. Like, I have no shot here. And all of a sudden you saw, like, the gears start turning for him. Like, he had to think about, oh, I can't shoot the basketball. What do I do now? Right? It wasn't automatic for him. Like, he didn't have the intuition of, like, the help is coming from here, or I know that this defender is guarding that player, that therefore that player is open. Or that player should be open and I can look for help. And if they're helping the helper, like I know that the wing 3-point shooter is going to be available. You saw that Markkanen was overthinking when he was double teamed. And that's going to be a big issue. And I think there's going to be some teams walking away from this game with real game tape on, Markkanen might not be the best guy to understand what happens if we just like put 2 on the ball immediately when he gets it. Now, the benefit of the Jazz offense and how Lauri Markkanen is so good at playing is sometimes Lauri Markkanen gets the ball before he even can like react to it, right? So he's very good at moving off ball. He's a fabulous screen setter. I think Lauri Markkanen is very good at preventing you from being able to send that double team to begin with. But if as the Jazz offense slows down, if we get to the playoffs, right? And this isn't a this year thing necessarily, but if we go 1 or 2 years from now and you want to say, okay, Lauri Markkanen is going to be a guy that we have to rely on to score points, Lauri Markkanen is going to have to get a lot better at, let's say he's beasting against second units and they just have to like send a second guy against him to guard those possessions. He has to figure out, all right, what can I do with the ball in my hands that isn't scoring the basketball? Right? And we are seeing a mega, super, amazing, most improved player caliber super leap from Lauri Markkanen this year. He's an A-plus player. Love having him. I hope he's a Jazz man forever. I think we're seeing that sort of like second draft level jump that we see from some guys like him. Of this guy is a starter level championship caliber basketball player. So now I've already moved to what can he do more, right? And this is part of what we've felt over the past 2 years is what can Donovan and Rudy do more, right? We've begged Rudy Gobert in particular to just like, can you do a little bit more than what you have on the table? Because if you're able to do a little bit more, that helps. With Donovan Mitchell, we're like, hey man, you were a defensive stud in college. Can you do a little bit more defensively to be that sort of stud? And with Lauri Markkanen, I've already moved to that point where I say, I know you're a championship caliber second banana in the National Basketball Association. What can you do more? And now I'm looking at games like tonight where he's getting double teamed and he is having to think for a second about where his next move is going to be. And once you start thinking in the NBA, your offensive possession is dead and you're going to end up with a bad shot. So, positive game for Markkanen today. 25 points, 16 rebounds. I think that's a season high, unless he had more in like an overtime game or something. So, from there, again, this will be I think this will be the last request. For comments and questions today. Riley says on YouTube, evidently, according to Ben Anderson, who covers the Jazz from time to time, he says, Donovan pulled Walker Kessler aside postgame to tell him stop calling out what defensive coverages Utah was running because it allowed Donovan to know how to attack him. That's cool, man. That's just unquestionably a cool thing. That Donovan's saying, hey, big guy, hey, Rook, stop calling out your defensive coverages. It'll make you a better player. And I'm sure the kids talk to Kessler about postgame, but you have like an MVP candidate telling you, man, just stop doing that shit. And I know, Donovan's not going to play the Jazz against the season, so I think that helps. Donovan's telling him not to do that. Like I hope you all get as a chuckle like I do over Walker Kessler's screen this way, little man, right when he puts his thumb up. And he says, like, drive this way. Like, every time he sets a screen, he, like, puts his hand up. I guarantee you he was taught that in, like, middle school basketball, right? Okay, so if you're going to be the big man, you have to help your ball handler by telling him which way to go. And then it, like, worked for him through high school, and it worked for him through Auburn. And then in the NBA, it's, like, just so comical to watch him signaling where to screen. Like, I think your NBA caliber ball handlers know where you're setting a screen, buddy. And we have Donovan telling him, like, stop calling out what defensive coverages you're running. It's not the most philosophical or super basketball nerdy stuff that Donovan's teaching Walker there, but just the fact that he pulled him aside to tell him, that even makes it more impressive, right? It's such a basic, stupid, small thing that Donovan's like, hey, let me tell this young guy something that'll make him a little better at basketball. So with that, last request for anyone who wants to talk on Twitter Spaces, drop me a comment or question. From there, I just want to finish off by saying this is a great beer. I should take a sip while anyone ponders whether they want to ask me a question or not. Check my Twitter mentions for a bit. Well, with no requests on the Twitter, or we have our comments done with YouTube, I'm going to sign off for the night. We've been online for a little while. What a great postcast. What a great game. Donovan Mitchell scores 46 points. His first ever return to Utah. Emotional return, great tribute video, fun moments. We had Donovan Mitchell scoring bananas. We had Donovan Mitchell shooting air balls. We had a little comical booing during free throws for Donovan. But the Jazz get the win on the backs of a wonderful Jordan Clarkson fourth quarter, including just a ridiculous 7-point play, which he drew a bunch of free throws. Lauri Markkanen he wasn't terrific like he has been, but he was very good. 25 points, 16 rebounds on 12 of 14 free throw shooting, while only shooting 6 of 18 from the field. Jazz struggled from the field overall, but Nickeil Alexander-Walker was nice in reserve with 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, Walker Kessler started for Kelly Olynyk today. He had 11 rebounds and a block, but struggled against Evan Mobley on the offensive end, so it wasn't Kessler's best performance. Conley set the table with 13 points and 4 assists. Malik Beasley did his gunner thing, but he didn't shoot very well. 1 of 8 from 3 today for 13 points. Jaron Vanderbilt off the bench with 5 rebounds. Ochai Agbaji, who is a topic of much conversation today, got a much-deserved 18 minutes today but he only was able to put up 2 points and 4 rebounds. I thought his defense today was actually pretty solid today, unlike the past few games. So that is the Salt City Hoops postcast and beer. I'm so glad you all have joined us. Hopefully you guys had a beer with me. In my 13.5% beer, hopefully you've joined me with a few Coors Lights of your own or something like that. This has been a wonderful postcast, and I hope to catch you on the next one. We got what's our schedule coming up? I always forget to do this. Let's check our schedule. We got a Thursday game, I believe. No, it's a Friday game, Friday the 13th against the Magic at home. That Magic game will be fun. I hope we get to see Bol Bol. Bol Bol was active today but did not play, coming after a health and safety protocol's absence. Obviously, he's not their star player, but who doesn't love some Bol Bol action? So we get the Magic on Friday night. You know I'll be here in the postcast, and we'll be drinking beer on a Friday night. I hope you join us. All right, Salt City Hoops postcast. I'm Mark Pereira. Thank you for joining. Have a good night.